Life is unpredictable. No two moments are the same. Every day, we are faced with countless new scenarios which require us to make countless unique decisions, especially when we're dealing with other human beings, as we each embody an entire world of scenarios and decisions. Applied improvisation is the practice of safely and purposefully putting people in new situations so that they can get better at making unique decisions, as individuals as well as members of a group. About 2 years ago, I wrote a little paper on applied improvisation, how it could make us better musicians, learners, and people, and how we could try to practice and develop this innate ability. I used music, specifically jazz, as my focal point, because what better place to start than with people who are challenged to convey emotions and ideas with nothing but tubes of metal and bouncy buckets. As part of this original project, I planned to visit local schools and community ensembles and conduct workshops applying improvisation to jazz music. Of course, that ended up falling through. I also planned to use some generous funding from my alma mater to attend the Jazz Education Network's conference in Louisville, Kentucky, where I could ask some great educators and musicians what they thought about applied improvisation. That fell through as well. So instead, I hired some talented local musicians to join me at my own home to record an improvisation workshop and a short Q&A session. I split the workshop into 4 parts: initial performance, improv activities, final performance, and reflections. First, I'll go through what each of these parts entailed, then I'll cover some observations from the musicians, as well as some of my own observations. Once everyone had arrived, made introductions, and had some snacks, there's the initial performance. In this stage, I asked the musicians to play a blues of their choice, Blues in the Closet, followed by a jazz standard of their choice, My Shining Hour. By giving them the freedom to select the music and encouraging them to select pieces that are relatively straightforward, I aimed to establish the most unthreatening performance environment possible. I didn't want to impose any extra surprises or challenges that might distract them from the already complicated task of being in the moment and making music together. After the initial performance, we moved on to the improv activities. I had them play 3 different group improv games: Zip Zap Zop, Pass the Gesture, and Story Swap. I selected these games specifically so that over time, the musicians would have more and more opportunities to practice what I consider important aspects of group creativity and collaboration. For Zip Zap Zop, they were asked to form a circle and began with a single player pointing to a random group member saying zip. The player selected would continue by saying zap and pointing to someone else, continuing through the sequence Zip Zap Zop at increasing speed until a player said a word out of order or hesitated. This player was made out, and the game continued with 1 fewer player until only 2 were left. I chose Zip Zap Zop as the first game to help the group establish a strong foundation of listening. While the rules are extremely simple, point and say the right word, it requires each player to focus intently on communicating with the others. Even before the group could get to a speed where mistakes might happen, they're proving that they're aware of each other and ready to respond at any time. Remaining in a circle, the next game began with 1 player making a gesture with their body and face. The player next to them was tasked with quickly copying this gesture and then performing a new gesture to be copied by the player beside them, and so on. I wanted Pass the Gesture to take that foundation of listening that was just established and begin adding creativity to the equation. Can you make unique decisions in the moment while responding to the contributions of other group members? I also believe the nonverbal aspect of this game is important. Body language can be a huge part of communication, but isn't always the focus of our interactions with others. Unless, of course, you're in a situation like playing music, or you might not be able to communicate verbally at all. The third game, on the other hand, was entirely verbal, and began with 1 player in the circle making up a story. Whenever I would clap, the next player would resume the story from where the previous left off, going in whatever narrative direction that they chose until I clapped again. I wanted this game to really cement the idea that not only is each group member uniquely creative, but that their individual creativity can be combined to achieve something greater. So I tried to clap at times when I felt the next player would have the most freedom in their answer. The final performance was simple. They played the same two pieces from the initial performance. Once again, I did this trying to limit distractions and provide a situation where the aspects of group creativity they just practiced could really shine. When they were done playing, I asked them what they thought of their performance after the activities compared to before. Bass player noticed themselves trying to pay better attention to the drummer and soloists, as well as purposefully giving space for others to contribute by doing things like holding down the 4 while they go off. Trumpet player said the performance outright improved, especially on My Shining Hour, saying the energy was kept better, and that it felt like the group was jumping on new things, more confident to go for new stuff and riskier options, rather than just testing the waters. The trumpet and bass player both claimed they felt their group mates' personalities came through more after the activities. Piano player thought the second time was more intentional, specifically describing a moment during the trumpet player's solo on My Shining Hour when he felt the bass, drums, and trumpet were breaking it down and telling him, "Don't play, we're talking right now." Drummer also felt there was a more intentional atmosphere after the games, saying at first the performance felt passive, questioning, as in what's going to happen, but ended up feeling much more active and involved, as in let's do something, see what happens. And the sax player thought the games made the group creative process obvious, clearly illustrating the evolution of ideas. When someone hands an idea to you, you can build upon it and pass it on to create something even better. I call this element of improvisation theme development. Someone makes a unique decision, puts an idea out into the world, and another person decides to take that idea and present it in their own way, expanding it, growing it. A couple days after our workshop, I went through the videos of the performances and counted the number of theme developments. To me, theme development in jazz music could be a soloist beginning with a melody similar to the one the previous soloist ended with, or a rhythm section player responding directly to something the soloist has played. I counted 30% more moments of theme development in the final performance compared to the initial. Of course, this is not a perfect evaluation, but I think it hints at what's possible. Now, let's look at a few moments from their final performance of My Shining Hour where aspects of group creativity were a little more obvious. 2 of which were discussed in the Q&A, and 1 which might have been purposefully avoided. This first example has to do with solo order. In the 3 tunes they played previously, the trumpet started the solo sections. There's nothing inherently wrong with this. They felt comfortable stepping forward to make that decision, and the rest of the group supported them. But on the second round of My Shining Hour, the pianist felt like shaking things up. You can hear the trumpet player play a single note before immediately stopping, and there was never any prior communication about the pianist starting first. And indeed, it seems they were ready to go with the trumpet again. But in an instant, they all picked up on the new idea presented and carried that energy forward as a group. And at the end of their solo, the pianist stopped playing entirely. This is the breaking it down moment they mentioned, and the start of our second example. Once again, the group had not talked about changing the texture here, but were still able to smoothly transition to the new feel. But there's an interesting wrinkle to this situation. The pianist had done this already, dropping out during the sax solo of the initial Blues in the Closet performance. So can this really be called a unique decision or even group creativity, since it seems it was the pianist's decision in the first place? The second half of their comment, getting the impression from the rest of the group that we're talking right now, tells me this moment was not simply the pianist acting alone towards a routine outcome. The musicians were listening to each other, and when the group entered the trumpet solo with no piano, they took that as an opportunity to truly evolve that idea, to the point where the piano could hear their decision. The final example I'd like to talk about is special, because I feel like people often associate creativity and improvisation with artistic genius. Like, wow, look at what they did. But when it comes down to it, we're all human. We all make mistakes. And where creativity and improvisation can really shine is when something goes wrong. Because very often you will be forced to make a series of unexpected and unique decisions. Working out your creative muscles can give you confidence and experience in managing these sort of decisions, and possibly inspire you to take that mistake and do something even greater. Being able to improvise through a mistake is especially valuable when working as a group, because with more people, there's more chances for something to not go as planned, or to not be planned in the first place. There was a little bit of a miscommunication during the drum solo of the final My Shining Hour. Trumpet began with a phrase and was answered by drums, but when sax joined in, there was some uncertainty about how to transition to the next phrase. There could be several different reasons why this happened, but that's not what matters here. Despite the miscommunication, they were actively listening to each other, and as a result, were able to find a way to move forward and continue making music as a group. No matter what problem, question, or unexpected issue we come to face, we should always be ready to listen, assess, and confidently make unique decisions. Whether it's something big, like living during a pandemic, or something small, like deciding what to cook based on what's in your house. Being creative helps us move forward, and practicing it is almost guaranteed to strengthen us as individuals and groups. So, I encourage you to embrace new situations, take risks, and try applying a bit of improvisation to your own life.